Hi, I'm Helen. I'm Head of Engagement and Learning Programmes here at the Irish Museum of Modern Art, and I'm with Bernie O'Reilly and Maud Hendricks from Outlandish Theatre Platform, whose work we're focusing on as one of the artist programmes that we're promoting on Culture Night. Bernie and Maud have been working on a trans-European programme, which they will talk about in more detail in a moment, and we're delighted to be presenting 5 digital women's stories on Culture Night. This is part of an ongoing programme called the People's Pavilion, which we have developed since reopening in June at the museum, where we're working and supporting artists who live and work in the Dublin 8 area. Hi Bernie, will you tell us a little bit about the origins of Outlandish Theatre Platform?
Yes, so myself and Maud trained together as performers, and in 2010 we set up Outlandish Theatre Platform, originally as a platform to explore performance and to make new work about Dublin now. And we've been creating work for the last 10 years where we're situated in Dublin 8, and we work in traditional contexts and theatres, but we also work in non-traditional spaces, and we work with professionals and with people who are local participants who would like anybody who's interested in working with us, we work with.
And the project that you're working on now, Maud, will you tell us a little bit about how it evolved?
Yeah, so in 2010 we started and made our first piece of work together as 2 performers, but very quickly we realised that we're very interested in our environment. I'm a geographer before a theatre maker, so we were very interested in kind of making work in response to the social changes that were happening, as well as the physical changes of our environment. So one of the projects that we worked on is called Commons to Gardens, which went on for a long time in collaboration with the community from St. Teresa's Gardens, and very much we learned kind of the reels of making collaborative work, and the tricky parts of it, and the nuts and the bolts were learned during that process. And so as a result of that, we've always been developing our practice, like Bernie said, in collaboration with both professional and community participants. So during one of those projects that we did called Maniac, which was part of a trilogy as part of our residency at the Coombe Hospital, we met Queva, who is the director of the City of Women Festival in Ljubljana. And she was very interested in our work, making work with both professionals and non-professionals, and also presenting that to both an existing established audience as well as a new audience. So audience development and self-representation was sort of key in that. And what she noted was that the tradition of participatory practice in Ireland was way more established than it has been and was in Ljubljana. And so we had started a conversation, can we work together? And the outcome of that is the project Women and Women, which is about self-representation of women, working in collaboration with women in the community, and women having a voice for themselves and turning that into a performative way. So it's about women in the public domain and looking at how women are represented, and as well as in the arts.
And there was a really positive response to the call out. Will you tell us about that?
Yes, so we were a little bit, and there's 5 aspects to the Women and Women project, and one of them is the WoW Awards. And we were a little bit taken aback with the idea of awarding women, because we thought it was quite a patriarchal convention. But then once we got over that, we put out the national call out, and the response was phenomenal. Women all over Ireland basically nominating women who they saw as fighters of gender equality and social justice. And there were women being put forward that we had never heard of, which is always exciting to learn about people that work in the field, and that is very important. So the project completely blew our minds, and we were completely taken aback with the positive responses that we were getting.
And in terms of issues that 5 collectively represent, what type of issues will we hear about?
I think the intersectionality of the issue. So one of the aspects where women were chosen on eventually out of the 57 women is the intersectionality. Specifically because, for example, Catherine Joyce speaks about representing women's rights, as well as traveller rights, as well as the right for housing. So it's kind of looking at a more intersectional way of rights, and all of the women do that in their own way, very, very eloquently and passionately.
And And did you ask them a series of questions, or did you give them an open field to respond to?
We first had a Zoom meeting, and that was really nice because we got to talk about both our project and about what we would like to create with them. So before we decided what the award would look like, we were going to do like a photographic public poster campaign. And visibility, and that was the main sort of like aim of the game. But the conversation became really clear that they had so much to say, and we're like, how can we do that? And there's so much talking on social media, so how can we present a portrait of these women whereby you really listen but also really see them? So we decided on silent video portraits with then a separately recorded sound file where they talk. So what happens, like, you can really sink into their soul, and you really look at them very intently before you hear what they have to say, and you're not looking at a moving mouth like you're doing now.
And Bernie, you're coming. This is the kind of culmination of a long period of work. So what next?
Well, with the Women on Women project, we're working with 3 partner organisations, and there's Teach Inc. in Skopje, Vox Femini in Zagreb, and City of Women Festival in Slovenia. So this is one of 5 elements that we're working towards. So today it's really exciting to be launching the WoW Awards, and the portraits themselves speak for themselves, and it really is a beautiful collaboration between ourselves and Jeddah Dupree, the filmographer, and the women themselves have written their own text, and they're communicating what they would like to communicate through these portraits. And then next we'll be going back, hopefully, to Slovenia to make a performance there with 20 women. And we are really enjoying this European collaboration, and all of the partner organisations are women's platforms, and they work very much on an interdisciplinary level. So they, this art, activism, media and education, are all on their platforms, and we're really learning a lot from that. And we will be continuing our work until 2021, and we'll be developing new performances, and we'll be hosting a conference in March next year, hopefully.
I'm Aideen Kelly, Principal of St Mary's Primary School in Dorset Street in Dublin. It's my job to lead with empathy, to lead with heart, to lead with openness. Often I meet families who are homeless or from a minority group or who don't speak any English. They are so daunted just knocking on the door. You want to relieve the stress and strain, to say, it's okay, come in, we'll look after you. I want every person who walks through the door of our school to feel welcomed. To achieve that, the children and staff have to be comfortable and proud. They have to see themselves reflected in the building, in the books we read, the resources we use, the fabrics and learning themes we choose. It's my job to actively seek ways to encourage children and families to share their home languages and cultures, to be proud of who they are and how they share those parts of themselves. It is about ensuring that the children's friends recognise their languages as a strength, something to be interested in and to ask about and learn from. That openness to learn from every single person opens hearts and minds and extends beyond the school walls to what lies outside, in homes, on the street, and in our community.
I am Mavis Ramazani, and I am calling on all of you and the government to do everything in your power to dismantle direct provision and introduce on-door accommodation. Asylum seekers and refugees with diverse migrant experiences need autonomy over their own lives to overcome their traumas, integrate with communities, and live in dignity. The need for dignity does not diminish the other. People needing safety is no reason to restrict access to protection. We must care about refugees at our doorstep and Europe's doorstep. I urge you to listen to me as a person who lived in direct provision and experienced the inhumane treatment with my daughter. It is important now more than ever to stand with us and fight for justice and equality.
My name is Queva Butterly. I'm an educator, an activist, a psychotherapist in training, a parent, a witness. I work with communities who are seeking refuge, women, men and children who make long, dangerous, often traumatic journeys in search of safety, of dignity, of meaning. I'm originally from Ireland, but my family had its own trajectory of migration, and my childhood was one of movement and love. I've lived much of my adult life working with human rights, social justice, education, and healthcare projects in Haiti, Mexico, Guatemala, Palestine, Iraq, Lebanon, and now in refugee camps in Europe. I've worked with communities who have endured profound loss, injustice, and grief, but who also build and hold space for beauty, creative resistance, and joy. I try to live and embody a solidarity beyond borders and across seas, one rooted in active anti-racism, respect, love, and accountability. I believe in freedom, collective, personal, emancipatory, breath-giving, powerful freedom. And I believe in women.
My name is Catherine Joyce. I'm one of the managers of Blanchardstown Trafford Development Group, and I was a founding member of the Blanchardstown Trafford Development Group. In 2020, one of the primary issues affecting travellers is accommodation. I've been saying for a number of years that the main response to accommodation needs to be taken out of the local authorities and needs to be given to an independent agency. Similar to the Roads Authority, where they have the resources and the time and the energy to look at what the needs are and to look at how to respond to that. And it does need traveller advisors to make sure that the accommodation is culturally appropriate. The other issue then in relation to Travers is obviously the role of women and men in the Traver community. And while women have a really strong role in the community, it is starting to get very confused with the issues around accommodation, the issues around human rights. It's very hard to look for women's rights when you're looking for basic accommodation and education and water needs to be addressed in the Traver community.
My name is Marie Mulholland. I was born in Belfast. I am the product of a place where the conflict over inequality and injustice caught fire and burned for 30 years of my lifetime. It made me an activist and an Irish Republican. I am the product of a long line of working class women, women who scrubbed other people's houses, women who worked outside the home, in the mill and the factory to provide for their families, women in aprons and overalls. I am the oldest child of a lone parent family. It made me a feminist. At 18, I came out as a lesbian in a time when the world was harsher to my kind, but where the solidarity of struggle and the fight against oppressions created strong communities of outlaws and rebels. In this year of global chaos, political tyranny, increasing violent misogyny, pandemic, and black people's quest for justice, I turned 60. Abuse of power is the single cause of injustice and discrimination in the world. From domestic abuse of women and children, violent misogyny on a global scale, the exploitation of workers, the occupation of lands, and the usurping of natural resources, the maintenance of poverty and inequality, the denial of basic rights, all derived from the abuse of power. But 30 years ago, I came across something written by African-American poet Sophia Henderson Holmes. I try to embrace it as my personal mantra, because no matter how tough the situation or challenging the context, remember that there is always the possibility that together we might be able to create something entirely new, hopefully better, and perhaps even a little bit wonderful. Reading Sophia, I learned from her that between rocks and hard places, diamonds are made.